Okay, so yeah, we'll be starting now. Just a moment before we start with the content. I request everyone to keep their mics on mute so that we all have a smooth experience. And like we'll be having a doubt session at the end, so it would be great if you could keep your doubts when after the lecture is over. And we'll be recording this lecture and it will be put up on a YouTube channel. So by joining this meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. So, like continuing with a mini lecture series, in a fourth lecture, we are having the theme of procedural generation, which in one line can be called creating art with math and code. So, let's first of all have a look at what is procedural generation. Like we have played games, open world games, like they have a big environment kind of thing, and like all of that has to be manually designed by 3D artists. So at times that process gets very repetitive and painful, like and it also incurs a lot of additional costs. So what procedural generation does is tries to create such data algorithmically as opposed to manually. Often like big studios do it through a combination of human generated assets and algorithms along with computer generated randomness and processing power, which boosts the human creativity. In this lecture, we'll be looking at procedural generation in the context of world generation, as in games like you must have played, like you must have at least heard of games like Minecraft, which is a block-based world, open world game. So we'll be looking at the uses of noise in such procedural generation and a brief overview of world generation architecture that is commonly used in such games. Yeah, so first of all, let's get clear with some terminology. Uh, So in 3D graphics, we refer to a lot of common things by different names. So it would be best to get them clear right now. First, the first term will be texture. So this is what we call an n-dimensional array in computer graphics. The value stored in the array can be of any type, any numerical type, integer, float, and even structures of such primitive data types. Uh, so in this lecture, we'll be restricting ourselves to 2D textures. 2D textures we have all seen, like 2D textures simply images that like we click on our phones and stuff. So 2D textures are mostly stored and represented in the form of images. So how you can visualize is that let's say a 2D array is just a matrix. A matrix has an entry for every I comma j. So how you can visualize it in an image, that for every I comma j pixel, you have colors, and colors have four channels which can be used as like four values where we can store data, which is the red channel, green channel, blue channel, and alpha channel. The first three decide the color of the pixel, and A decides the transparency. But like in this lecture again, we'll not be using it in terms of pixels. We'll be using it to store data that we want. Again, like for example, an image of 256 x 256 pixels can be represented in code like this, like by making a 256 x 256 array of a struct that we defined here. Yeah, another thing to note is that the types of these are unsigned char, so every of these variables can store values from 0 to 255. That's what we see in common images. Okay, so to see how textures, like some a common use of 2D textures in computer graphics, like we have all played games. So like there are 3D models, but 3D models are colored, and coloring a 3D model is quite a painful task. And how it is done algorithmically is that we take an image, we paint on that image, and that image is wrapped around our 3D model, which is like can be visualized as this Santa shaped chocolate being covered up in this wrapper. So that's how like games mostly work, and that's how we see our models being colored. So that's one use case of 2D texture. And next up, we'll soon see our use case. Uh, okay, some more terminology is noise. Noise generators are similar to random number generators that we commonly use, but like they have one restriction that they provide a deterministic value per coordinate in space. So again, in case of 2D textures, for every I comma j pixel, your I comma j entry, I'll be getting a value, and that value will not change. I can determine that value at any time. So, and sampling is simply an array access. So looking up a value in a texture for any set of particular indices. Okay, so now we like just studied about noise and texture. So combining these both, we get noise textures, which is what founds the base of procedural generation. Noise textures are a way of storing 2D random data. So how they're used, we'll be looking at it later on in the slides. Let's just first understand how to interpret these images. So all these images you're seeing are black and white. Why is it so? Because the data we have stored per pixel is just one simple integer, and it is replicated across the red, green, and blue channels. So like it contains various shades of gray and black and white. So like black is 000 and white is 255, 255. So these are the random values which we can further use. So going on, we'll focus on two specific noise textures, that is the white noise and the Perlin noise. White noise, like this is how we can see now white noise. Now you must have seen this image when we had cable connections in our TVs and the connection used to drop. So that was basically because a random value was replicated in RGB channels and it was simply displayed to screen. You can see that there's no coherence among in like one pixel and the adjacent pixels. There's no pattern that is there. There's no dependency among any pixels. But such noise has its own use. But like a need was felt for continuous noise, wherein Perlin noise was introduced. Like what I mean by continuous noise is this: you're able to see that some areas black, some areas white, and there are like colors are interpolating between them. That is our value. Random values are interpolating. So what we can say that across space, our random value like we interpolate through various values and are able to generate more organic randomness that we can control. Okay, so now next we'll be going up on some mathematics on how 2D Perlin noise generation works. Understanding this helps us build up upon our own algorithms that we can use to generate various stuff. And the prerequisite we basically have is just knowing some basic vector math that I guess we all studied. So what we do, first of all, we'll take a texture. Let's say we take our texture that's 256 x 256 in size. We'll be saving our noise in that. And we'll define a grid over it. A grid, and again in grid the grid will be made up of cells, and the dimension of cells is again chosen by us. It is generally like the value of the size of the cell, it depends upon our use case, and we'll later see how it is decided. So let's say it's 16x16 pixels, and the next step what we do is we define a random unit vector for each of the vertex in this grid. Okay, so like you can see here, the arrows point like the all the magnitudes of the arrows are same, just the direction changes. Next up, we do certain operations on pixels. So what we'll do, like we'll start iterating upon the texture, the 256x256 texture, and for let's say any point for any pixel A in that, for example, let's say it lies here. What we'll do is we'll iterate upon the vertices that surrounds it. So like I'll just show you something to explain it easier. Yeah, so this is one cell and a point that we are currently like we're iterating, and this is our current point. So what we'll do is for each corner, we'll draw a vector from the corner to the point, and these are shown in this blue color, and yellow color shows the noise value that were generated at the corner. What we'll do is like we'll compute dot product of these two vectors for each of the four values. So we'll be having four values corresponding to each pixel, and we'll just store them. This pseudocode here is similar to that. We iterate upon vectors, calculate an offset, and just add it to a set of values that we created an array above there, and we append the dot product to that array. So now we have four values corresponding to each pixel, and in this image here, this particular image, what it shows is for like you're able to see there are a lot of small squares. So for each pixel, the dot product value for the closest vertex has been shown, and you can see it varies from 1 to -1, like it should, since everything is unit sized here. Yeah, so as you can see, like the dot product with the other three nodes cannot be represented at, like we'll need 4 pictures for that. Going ahead. Now we have 4 values corresponding to each pixel, and like corresponding to each pixel that also corresponds to a certain vertex. So these 4 values need to be interpolated so we get one fixed value for a point that we can store into the texture. The method used here, like we've all studied linear interpolation, it's used between 2 points. But as we have 4 points, we use bilinear interpolation. It's similar to linear interpolation, just with it's done with three steps. What we do here is, first of all, we'll take this Q12 and Q22 values and we'll interpolate between them to reach a point R2. So what we'll do, we'll assign the weight of each value will depend upon the difference in x coordinate. So like Q12 will have the weight of this and Q22 will have the weight of Q22 and R2. And similarly, we do it for the bottom 2 points. And what next up, we interpolate these 2 values to get the final noise value, and we interpolate in the y direction. So what we see, like this interpolation actually conserves a sense of direction, since the dot product value of this point will be most dominant and this will be least dominant. So we'll get a continuous function. So yeah, finally we get a value that lies in -1 to 1. This can be stored into an image file by scaling all values to such that they become from 0 to 255. It's simple, like just add 1, divide by 2, we get from 0 to 1. And multiplying by 255, we're able to get RGB values that we can store into our image. Yeah, so we replace these values in the RGB channels. This is the sort of texture we get. It's not black and white because like the scale used is different. We're able to see like how it's a continuous texture, and we can actually we can now use it. And let's just see some examples of using noise. This will be explained by Meet. Over to you.
Okay. So we'll be seeing some examples which have been made in an open source voxel-based game engine called Terrassology. Voxel-based games are games where the world is made up of blocks. So, yeah. Now we'll see how we can generate a simple terrain using Perlin noise. The image which we obtained just while we generated the Perlin noise, that can be scaled down to values ranging from -1 to 1 for each indice of I comma j, or we can say x comma z for representing it in coordinate space. So as you can see in the picture, the height is represented by the noise function, the noise at x comma z, which is multiplied by 20. So what you see is a simple terrain which goes up and down in sync with the Perlin noise. Now we can add complex structures, but we start with the most basic one. Like we'll try to add a mountain by using another noise layer. In this, on top of the last terrain, we add one more noise layer where we use a higher scaling factor, but we use only noise values which are positive, which leads to an abrupt increase at places where the noise value is greater than 0, and hence leading to the tall mountains as you see. This also makes the terrain discontinuous. So yeah, we can add structures at random places using white noise. This can be done by setting a threshold value which decides whether an object will be placed or not. So we can see that in the image, we choose a threshold, and if the white noise value at a particular x comma z is greater than the threshold, we place a cube at that place. Similar thing can be used to place trees in actual world, open world games. As you can see in the pictures, these are some complex structures which are made using the noise functions we talked about. Okay, now we'll talk about voxel-based world generation architecture. We can consider the world to be made up of multiple chunks of a definite size. At a point of time, only a particular amount of chunks are rendered, because we have limited memory and an infinite world. At first, a reference point needs to be decided around which we'll make up our world. So we generally use the player's position as the reference in open world games. Next slide, please. Manas, next slide. Okay, this chunk generation takes place in a multi-threaded fashion because um, two chunks have very low interdependency, and this highly speeds up the process and make open world games feasible. These chunks are generated starting from the reference point, and in the outwards, and the the chunks are generated in the outward direction until we reach the set number of maximum chunks. And once a chunk is generated and it goes out of the rendering distance, the data is serialized and saved to a file. Also, when a saved chunk is needed again, instead of generating the chunk again, we can load the saved data back into the game. Okay, thank you for listening to the lecture, and now we are open for questions.
Okay, so since there's no questions, we'll just end this lecture right here. Thank you for listening.